everybody, and welcome to another episode of Banking Matters. I'm your host, Linsey Hugueley, and joining me today is Ginger Devine. Ginger is the Senior Vice President and Chief Risk Officer at Citizens First Bank in the Villages, Florida. She is responsible for overseeing the enterprise risk management framework. Ginger's team provides independent oversight and guidance for managing risk and ensuring compliance, including the development and implementation of risk management measures across the bank. Her team leads efforts to build and sustain a strong culture in which all employees understand the importance of managing risk to deliver responsible growth and serve customers and local communities. Ginger's banking career began in 1999 and has included numerous roles in retail, internal audit, compliance, operations, human resources, and risk. Ginger is a certified regulatory compliance manager and certified enterprise risk professional, and recently joined the South Florida Compliance Association as a director. She has a passion for supporting others and understanding the why. As a risk officer, her most important role is that of advisor, building and developing relationships to ensure a successful program is cultivated. Welcome, Ginger. We are so excited to have you, and I'm really pumped about this great conversation we have planned today. But first, here at Banking Matters, we always like to hear how our guests got their start in banking.
Well, thank you, Lindsay. I'm excited to be here with you today and talk a little bit about some third-party risk management. But before we get into that, a little bit about me. As you said, I started my career back in 1999. Seems like a long time ago now that I say that out loud. And I was, I had been a stay-at-home mom, was looking for something part-time to do, and I found a nice place at a local community bank. Started working there as a teller and was able to quickly start to make my way throughout the banking organization. Was fortunate enough to be selected to be a part of a brand new internal audit department that bank was starting once they hit the 1 billion threshold. And that exposed me to so much about banking that I didn't even have a clue happened when I was working on the teller line. So from there, that just really grew my passion for learning the why behind what was happening all around me. And that brought me to where I am today in risk management.
That's awesome. And there's so many people, especially our guests that we have on. We kind of call it accidental bankers. That it's not like you set out to be in banking, but you start and then you just kind of progress through the banks. And that's what I think is so cool about the culture of community banks, because there are so many opportunities to grow and hone certain skills. It's a lot similar to my journey, is the way that yours sounds for sure. So it definitely adds to a very well-rounded
Absolutely.
for sure.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk with you today about third-party risk management, and I really honestly just would love to start with the guidance that was pushed out this year in May. What are your thoughts on that in
Um,
regards to the
I was
third-party
I
risk?
was really excited to see that guidance come out this past May. It wasn't that it was anything brand new or, was extremely groundbreaking, but what it did was it reaffirmed for us that the things that we had been doing were the things that we should be doing. And it helped clarify some things for us so that if there was any doubt about what direction we should be going in, it provided us with that roadmap. So that guidance is something that is very, very helpful. And for anyone who has any responsibilities in vendor management, which in my opinion, if you're a banker, you have a responsibility in vendor management. I encourage you to take a look at it. It's an easy read. It's not one of those legalese, regulatory FAQs or anything like that. It really does give you practical things that you need to do to be able to manage your third party risk.
Absolutely. And listen, we love non-legalese guidances, especially when you can take it and it's tangible and you can put it to work. So let's talk about what the internal efforts look like inside of an organization. How, as far as combating risk, and just like you said, you think your thoughts are that everyone if you're in banking, you're in vendor management as well. Can you delve into that a little more? How that works together within an organization?
Absolutely. One of the things that I like to talk with people about is if we think back 10 years ago, maybe, I remember when we talked about who are our vendors, we would get a list from accounts payable, right? You go to the accounting department and say, hey, who did we pay this year? Those are my vendors. And I have that list. Okay, vendor management is done, right? And now over the past 10 years or so, we've really taken that ownership to a whole new level. And it's become much more involved across our enterprise. So today, everybody has a piece of it. Um, Information security is looking at vendor from the perspective of trying to make sure we've got SOC reports, that if there are any controls that we should have in place internally, that we have those in place and they're documented. Our operations teams are making sure that they have ongoing checks and balances and internal controls to make sure the vendors they're working with are doing all the things that they told us they were going to do. And then we're verifying that by what we're looking at on a day-to-day basis. Our management teams are looking at those vendors to go, hey, these are the promises they made us. Are they reaching those promises? Are they letting us down? Have we created a gap that we didn't realize we were going to have when we onboarded this vendor? And do we need to do something different? Our board of directors is looking at our vendors to make sure that they're protecting our reputation, that they're in line with our strategies and our goals. And then they're looking at management to say, hey, you better be making sure you're managing them effectively, right? Because at the end of the day, what they do is what we do. So it
Absolutely.
really does take the whole organization to be able to contribute to the ensuring that the vendor's doing what they said they were going to do, that they're providing the service at the level we need them to provide it at, and that we're not creating any unknown gaps.
Absolutely. I love that you point out, especially for operational wise, that they need to understand when we sign that contract, what the bank expects from them. And then feel like, as far as my experience with the banks that I've been in and the banks that I work with now, that's a really big gap because usually the person doing the assessment and helping
Mhm.
manage and onboard that company, they aren't involved in the output of that relationship.
Right.
So, what steps have you taken in order to explain and involve your operations in that part of the vendor management?
So we assign the actual users of the vendor services as owners of the vendors. So on at least an annual basis, we're sitting down and we're talking with them about whether or not their performance is meeting our needs, whether or not they're checking all the compliance boxes they should be checking. Has there been any time that that vendor has potentially let us down, whether it be, they were supposed to do something today and it didn't happen for 3 days after that day, or when they made this customer contact, it wasn't up to our customer service standards. And so just talking with them about that on an ongoing basis, making sure that we're doing ongoing news searches related to that vendor. Have there been any recent complaints? Have you talked to anybody else who uses that vendor lately? What is their experience like? A lot of those things that you do when you're initially trying to onboard the vendor, and when that operations group is trying to convince you that they really need this vendor to provide this service, we kind of go back through that every year and say, okay, this is what we said. Is that still what's happening? Are they still meeting our standards? Are they still meeting our industry standards? What kind of issues are we having? And are they reactive to us? Are they responsive to us when we have something going on? Are they truly being there and being our partner?
Absolutely. I love that, which I am very much of a teamwork makes the dream work kind of gal.
Mhm.
And when you're in a culture that promotes that, it makes everything so much better. And especially you've kind of given that responsibility to them to be able to come back and let you guys know
Mhm.
and open that floor for dialogue. I always think that that's really great as well.
Right,
And
right.
so, as we're talking about third party risk and looking into it, what are the buckets that really require the most focus?
Mhm.
What are some that maybe get overlooked?
So the things that we spend a lot of time focusing on with the vendors is making sure that we understand what data they have that's ours, how they're using that data, where that data is being stored, and if there's been anything that's changed. A lot of times you'll start off a relationship with a vendor and the intent is that you're using the vendor for A. And as you go along, you realize, oh, they also do B and C. So let's add that on. And by doing that, if we're not having conversations about those additional services we're adding on, we may not understand exactly what all they're getting from us and what all they're doing on our behalf. So it's really important to make sure that we thoroughly understand what information of ours do they have and what are they doing with it, because that's where we have a lot of risk. And if we don't understand that up front, we don't know how to mitigate that risk. So you can't mitigate what you don't know. I mean, it's that old saying, you don't know what you don't know. So having the conversations and talking about that, and making sure that we're staying on top of it is really what helps us mitigate the risk associated with the vendor.
Absolutely. And so, as you've gone through several of these over the course of the years, have you have you ran into any road bumps to where it has been difficult to get this information from a company? And if so, how have you maneuvered that?
Yeah, it's very difficult, especially once you've signed the contract. It's it's very similar to that loan borrower that you could get everything that you needed while they were going through the application process, and as soon as it's approved, they're like, oh, you don't need anything from me anymore. But vendors can kind of be that same way. Once you've signed that contract, it can be more difficult to get the information that you need from them. And so on an ongoing annual basis, as we're collecting due diligence, updated SOC reports, financials, and insurance, it can be a challenge to get the vendor to be responsive, which is why it does take a team effort. So you need the person who has that relationship with that vendor. We all have relationship managers at the different third parties that we use. So having that person that really has that relationship, that's going to be the one that's going to go, hey, I want to renew this contract or not renew this contract, staying in communication with them and collecting that data, makes a big difference. I can't just send an email, a random email from somewhere, and expect the vendor is going to be responsive. Um, and we try very hard to be flexible and understanding depending on what it is that we're asking for. But unfortunately, there are times where you simply can't get something, and you have to make the decision, am I comfortable with accepting the risk of not having this information and moving forward, or do I need to reevaluate this relationship?
Absolutely. And so, did your risk management framework that you use, is this
Mhm.
something that you have put together yourself, that you've developed?
So we have developed our own internal ERM framework. We spent the last 2 years custom building it so that it was suited for us.
Mhm.
There's a lot of great products and tools that are out there and available on the market, but we really wanted something that would cover all of our little nuances. We're a community bank. There are a lot of community banks, but we have some differences too. So we wanted to be able to make sure that it was going to be adequate for us as we grow and we change. But we also do partner with a vendor to help us with the collection and organization of our vendor management information.
Awesome. So what do you feel like are the most beneficial areas of the framework that you guys have developed now?
I think the most beneficial part is that we really sat down with all of our business lines and we talked with them about the things that were of concern to them. And then the things that we knew that were just of inherent concern for our industry. And we identified what those top risks were. And we thought through the process of, if this risk happens, if this risk gets triggered, what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? And so we built our framework to outline that workflow that says, if risk A happens, that means that we are going to need to do B, C, and D. And this is how we're going to do it, how we're going to report it, and then how we're going to follow up on it. And we also spent time with the business lines talking about, if you don't do anything to address the risk once it's triggered, this is what you can expect the consequence of that will be. And you have to be comfortable and willing to say, I'm okay with that. And if it's of high enough concern that you're telling me it's one of your, top 15 risk concerns, I really don't think you're going to be okay with this happening and not doing anything.
Absolutely not. And so, as you go through that process with your business lines, do you think that that has given them look? in your bio, you said that you are very much a why person, which
Mm-hmm.
I function on that basis in my household, with my children, in life, with work. It is, I just do so well when I understand why we have to do it. Do you think that in the level of involvement, and also it sounds like the responsibility that has been placed on your different business lines in regards to vendor management, do you think that that has played a huge role in the success of y'all's risk management?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because they understand it's not just that Ginger, as CRO, is coming in and saying she's concerned about something, and everybody's kind of looking around going, what does it matter? Having those conversations with them and talking through that with them has helped them realize, oh my gosh, the consequences of this could be significant. Just because it may not happen doesn't mean I shouldn't be prepared for it. And I think that's been a big game changer for the business lines, for them to understand that, I'm not a doomsday coming in and telling you, everything's just going to fall apart. But things go wrong, things can happen, and we need to be prepared for that. And this is how we prepare. And so I think that it's made a big difference in everyone's perspective on managing our risk.
Absolutely. I really love that. And it sounds like y'all's culture is very supportive of all of this as well.
Mhm.
But definitely, I do love the thought process of how you start with your risk and you say, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z to get rid of it. And if this happens, then this is how we're going to respond.
Right.
Just really breaking things down, it makes it tangible, because I know that risk management can be very overwhelming to some.
Yeah. Everything can go wrong, right?
Yes. Yes. But yeah, Ginger, as we wrap up, we always like to have, what is the one piece of advice you would like to leave for our listeners?
Well, as we're thinking about third party risk and what we have our third parties doing for us, I just think it's really, really important for us to always remember, no matter what we outsource, it's still ultimately our responsibility, and we have to have ownership and accountability for it. So make sure you understand who that vendor is, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and you do everything you can to mitigate any potential risks that they pose.
Absolutely awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ginger. For the rest of our listeners, that's Banking Matters.